Let me join on.
Hi, good morning. Good morning, everybody. We're just waiting on a couple more people.
Good morning.
Hey there,
Good
everyone.
morning.
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 Morning. Okay, so I actually think this is everyone, so y'all were just waiting on me. Sorry. Sorry about
We got
that.
one more coming on here. We're
Oh,
just
okay.
waiting for Patty to sign on.
Okay, sounds good.
There she's there.
There she is. Hi, guys. Hello. Um, okay, so yeah, thank you all for coming to this home TBA training, and I apologize for the confusion. With the meeting schedule. To make a long story short, so OHCS used to do recorded trainings via Zoom. That was kind of like the only way we had because like Microsoft Teams gets a little finicky, weird. Like it's not the best platform for recording meetings. Um, but OHCS let us know that they've discontinued Zoom and we have to use Teams for meetings. And the way that we made it work is basically each section within OHCS has like one or two people that can record the meetings. Um, and in order for them to do it, they have to send out the invite, they have to start the meeting, and then they upload it to YouTube. So that's why we have Amanda here. She is one of our she's one of my coworkers. And she's kind of our section's like gatekeeper when it comes to these recorded meetings. So yeah, it'll be available, I believe, on YouTube. I'll send you all the link. Um, so that y'all can review it later. And I think I have it set to be available for like 2 years. So that should be plenty of time. And, by then we'll probably need a refresher, which is fine. Um, so I have like kind of two different trainings for this program, and I'm not sure exactly like which one would be beneficial to y'all. One of them is kind of like this overview of like what the program is, like who's eligible for it, what's the background to the program. And the other one is more of the mechanics of like how do you fill out these various forms that OHCS and HUD kind of needs in order to, process your requests and like put the person on the program on our end and stuff like that. Um, in the past, I've noticed people kind of want more of like that training than kind of the program overview, but I always like to start by giving y'all the option because I'm not entirely sure where the gaps are.
I think so. Yesenia and I have been trying to, process eligibility. It was more just for like a background, like who can we get through the home TBA program? What does it look like to get a family or a person eligible for that? And then if we do need additional help filling out the paperwork and stuff, we'll definitely reach out. But Yesenia and I have been working on those. So if we could just maybe do like the background one for Rihanna Kilton and Patty, that would be uber awesome.
Yeah, let me pull it up. Let's see. Yeah, that sounds absolutely great. Um, and I apologize. Normally I like have these up and ready to go. I just happen to like be in a different meeting prior, so I'm just kind of looking for it on my end. And the best part about these new training, this new Microsoft Teams meeting is that me struggling in front of you is all going to be recorded. So let's see. I think it's under here. And then it's not there. It's not there. Presentations. Okay. All right. Great. Found it, and I'll share screen shortly as soon as my PowerPoint loads. Okay. Okay, so I'll go ahead and share my screen. Are y'all able to see the PowerPoint?
Yep.
Great. Okay. Okay. So this is a PowerPoint of the overview of the Home Tenant-Based Rental Assistance Program. Here's a very high-level overview. And just so y'all know, it's been a while since I've updated this training, so anytime when there's like maybe something that, conflicts with, what's in the manual or whatever, I'll make sure to flag that for you. And I'll also share this PowerPoint presentation with y'all after the meeting. If y'all have questions throughout, I would say the easiest thing would be to just interrupt me. Um, I mean, I can see y'all on the side, so if you like raise your hand, that's fine too. But yeah, feel free to ask questions throughout. If I don't get at exactly like what y'all are looking for, just let me know, and then I can kind of pivot and we can talk about we can change the conversation. But that being said, here's the overview. So this is a program that provides rental assistance subsidies to low and very low income households. So you need to, generally, it's for households who earn up to 50% of the area median income. That is what about 90% of your participants should be. You can have 10% of your participants can have, I believe it's up to 80% of your area median income. Yeah, within a specific program year, you just have to, make sure that you're watching out for that, because that is something that may come up in monitoring. So, yeah. The other high-level overview piece of the program is tenants generally have the option to select the housing units of their choice within certain parameters, right? So like the unit has to pass an inspection, either HQS or Inspire. And that's, for obvious reasons. HUD doesn't want us to pay to put someone in an apartment that doesn't have, a roof or that has like broken windows. So the unit has to pass HQS inspections. You can limit individuals to like only select housing units within the areas that you service. So as in within, I know y'all service Malheur County, but I'm not sure which other one off the top of my head. I just can't think of the other ones that y'all service. But you can limit them to just those counties. If they, let's say they want to pick a housing unit that's I don't know, somewhere else that you don't service, you might then want to refer them to that community action agency instead. And then the other thing that came up before is if CNA owns any housing units, there might be some conflict of interest provisions in there, so I would just be careful. You would basically what would happen is if y'all own housing units and someone wants to rent something from there, you would have to contact OHCS, and then we would have to basically ask HUD if we can grant an exception to the conflict of interest provision. The conflict of interest for this program is basically, there's a lot that goes into it, but a very high level piece for conflict of interest is you can't have no individual can make any like financial gain from this program. Yeah. So the other piece, the subsidy moves with the tenant. That kind of goes with the tenant can select a housing unit of their choice. And the subsidy varies based on the household income, the fair market rents as established by HUD, and then the actual rent of the housing unit choice. So generally speaking, the goal of the program is to ensure that no one pays more than 30% of their adjusted income on rent. There's a lot of caveats in that, depending on how much the rent is, depending on like how much the person earns, right? There's a lot that goes into it, but that is the general goal of the program. Okay. So these are the eligible costs in Opus. Admin is like 10% of the grant generally. I think we've upped it. It used to be like 5% and then 8%, and now we're getting closer to upping that to 10% of the grant. So it should be at that amount now. The other costs in Opus, it's labeled as program. It used to be rent assistance, so that's kind of where this differs. And that is the program can pay for the following. It can pay for the monthly rental assistance, a security deposit, provided that the security deposit is no more than 2 times the rent, utility deposit, as long as someone is getting rental assistance or security deposit. The other thing that program can now pay for is inspections reimbursement. We used to have a separate grant from that, but HUD told us we couldn't do that anymore. So now we can reimburse through your regular allocation. And also inspections are limited to $50 per unit inspection, not 35 anymore. So these are the ineligible applicants. Generally speaking, students are not eligible for home TBRA. There are some exceptions. So basically, a student needs to meet, if a student meets all of the criteria listed on here, then they are not eligible. So if they're enrolled in higher education, under the age of 24, if they're not a veteran, not married, no dependent kids, if they don't have any disabilities, then they would not be eligible on their own. It's kind of like the way I like to think of it right there is when you're in college and you're filling out the FAFSA, the Department of Education will either classify you as an independent student or a dependent student. And if you're a dependent student, then like you you know, basically the Department of Ed says, okay, we're going to look at your parents' income to determine how much aid you're getting. This is kind of the same thing. If you're a dependent student, what HUD says is you're part of your parents' household. We're not going to give you a rental subsidy. You can be included in your parents' household for them to get the rental subsidy, but you as an individual are not eligible. If a student is married or if they're over the age of 24 or they don't meet all these criteria, then that's a different story. The other ineligible applicants is technically non-US citizens are not eligible. However, if you're considered a nonprofit charity, then you don't have to verify citizenship before providing benefits. So Multnomah County and Lane County are county governments and they are community action agencies. So they would have to verify citizenship for home TBA funding. CNA, I don't know if y'all meet the definition of charity. I'm not a tax expert, but I'm almost certain that y'all meet the definition of nonprofit. So if y'all meet both definitions of nonprofit and charity, then this would not be something that you would have to verify. So here's the conflict of interest provision. I kind of touched on it beforehand, but it applies to employees, agents, consultants, anyone relevant. Yeah, anyone of anyone that works at the community action agency, the conflict of interest provision applies. If you exercise any functions or responsibilities related to home TBRA, or if you have the potential to participate in decision-making processes or gain inside information, then you need to make sure that you're not obtaining any sort of financial interest or benefit. So what that, it looks a little different for everyone. One example is the one I gave earlier, where if you own a couple of rental apartments, whether as the community action agency or as yourself, that could be a conflict of interest. Another thing is if you have a family member that's applying to participate in the program, that could also be seen as a conflict of interest, because you might have more insight to the program, and HUD just considers it a conflict of interest. So subgrantees are responsible for identifying those types of situations. And if you think that a conflict of interest applies, then and you want to make an exception, then you would contact OHCS, and then we would contact HUD on your behalf. And we would need to get like written permission from them, basically. So, let's say like y'all are a pretty small agency. So let's say that like a family member wants to be on the home TBA program, and Ariana, I'm going to pick on you for a minute. Let's say that you have a family member that wants to apply to be on the program, and you're the only person at CNA who can verify eligibility. You would need, under that scenario, you would then need to contact OHCS, we would contact HUD, and then they would see whether there can be an exception to the conflict of interest. And then there's more information in the manual on this particular provision, but this is just kind of like a high-level overview. So these are the monthly subsidy limits. I've already mentioned the goal. It's to ensure tenants don't pay more than 30% of their adjusted gross income. The good news is that the App3 workbooks that we have for y'all calculates that for you. So you do need like the income information, but you don't necessarily need to like do the math. We tried to automate as much as we can. So yeah. There is currently a minimum tenant contribution to rent of $10. I believe with the new manual that's coming out, we're reducing that to 0, though. And then the maximum possible subsidy is the lesser of the following. So the contract rent plus the utility allowance for a housing unit minus $10, because there's a $10 minimum contribution right now, or the fair market rent minus $10. So what that basically means is, let's say a tenant chooses a housing unit that's like $1,000 a month, but HUD says, oh no, Malheur County's fair market rent is $800. The subsidy can only go up to the fair market rent, and then the tenant is kind of responsible for that remaining $200. But if you have like other funds that can cover that amount, generally that's okay, provided that the tenant is still only paying 30% of their income to rent. They can't pay less than 30% to be on the program. So there's the utility allowance, and that is basically just an estimate of the average cost of utilities within an area. Home TBA can pay for electric, gas, water, and garbage, cannot pay for telephone or cable. And then, yeah, so that's basically it. I think your public housing authority kind of has a utility schedule that you would use already. And what you would do is like, if a housing unit, you know, if like the rent in a housing unit covers all these things, then like the utility allowance would be 0. Anything that doesn't get covered needs to be included in the utility allowance. And right now, I believe we have it set up so that the subgrantee determines like how much goes to utilities and how much goes to rent. With the caveat that, the tenant needs to contribute $10 to rent. If you choose not to adopt the Public Housing Authority's utility allowance, you can establish your own. You would just need to let us know what that is. And yeah, because we would need that like on file for like monitoring purposes. These are the different regulations. And then program updates. I think this is old, but let's just go through it really quickly. Okay. Here's one. So last year we kind of started putting the subgrantees on like a submission schedule for home TBA. This is generally what it is. So basically the 15th of the month, we will send out an email that says that, you can submit your workbooks for the previous month. So on February 15th, we're going to send everyone an email that says you can submit for January. And then the deadline, again, this was last year when February, it was a leap year. And then the deadline is basically the last day of the month. And then our review deadline is the day before the 15th of the next month. So it's like 15-day intervals, right? So like we send out on the 15th, 15 days later, y'all send in the workbook, 15 days later, we verify the workbook. These are soft deadlines. It fluctuates because every agency is a little different, and there might be some extra work we might have to do with people that might cause them to, not be on track with like what our goal is. There might also be a couple of agencies that are really ahead of things. So they might be on a faster track. We say we need 15 days to verify the workbook. That's like the longest it'll take. If we can get it done sooner, we will, and then you'll get the workbook sooner. So soft deadlines, but we're trying to keep people as close to being on track as possible, because what we don't want is for agencies to wait until the end of the fiscal year to submit everything. That really stops our workload and, it basically makes everything that we do grind to a halt. It also messes everything up for like reporting purposes to HUD, because we have to report on, how many people we're serving throughout the calendar year, and we can't do that if we don't have an accurate number, basically. So that's just something to keep in mind. This is also different, but Inspire is going to be replacing HQS by October 1st, 2025, not 2024. We will need you to submit updated policies and procedures and property standards to comply with Inspire, but we're going to send out more guidance. We actually just spoke to DOJ, the Department of Justice in Oregon. So we'll be releasing guidance soon. We'll probably have like a big a big network-wide meeting to kind of go over what the steps are. You're not supposed to implement Inspire before you receive OHCS approval. So just keep that in mind. And then, we'll send out guidance and instructions. It's a weird change that hasn't happened in quite some time. So we're kind of all learning together, and we're just making sure that, we're doing as much as we can, as best as we can. And that was it in terms of the presentation. And Shannon, given what you kind of said was what y'all needed, I don't actually know if this helped at all, and I apologize. But I guess, was there anything more specific that you wanted to go over that maybe we can just kind of like talk through, or maybe I can pull up an app 3 and we can work through it together, or what would be helpful for you?
Yeah, I think this was very helpful because I know at least Ariana and Kelton hadn't been, especially Kelton hadn't been hardly any bit of home TBA background. Ariana a little bit, but Kelton's very, very new to the department, so it super was definitely helpful. But if you could pull up an app 3 and just kind of explain, just show us a little rough ballpark so they know where we're getting the numbers from and how that looks, that would be super awesome.
Yeah, let's do that together. Glad to know it was helpful, by the way. I yeah, really appreciate that. Okay. So I'll show you, I'll kind of do a walkthrough on how to get to the on how to get to the app threes, and then we'll go from there. So sharing a new screen. Okay. Is everyone able to see it?
I can see it.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. So this is the I don't even know what to call this, like the homeless services programs like landing page for OHCS. I will drop this link in the chat because I will be very transparent and say that I have no idea how to get to this screen from the OHCS home screen. I have to Google it every single time. And that might not be, the best way to do things, but it is what it is. I'll drop this in the chat after the meeting. So to find the app threes, and just as an overview, the app 3 stands for Appendix 3, and that is basically the subsidy calculation workbook. I prefer to call it the subsidy calculation workbook. App 3 was kind of a name that was given to it before I got here. Yeah, that's kind of how everyone else knows it as. So we'll just go with that. So what you do is you click on Subgrantee Systems on the left-hand side. Click on the Homeless Services section dashboard. And then it'll take forever to load. Okay. So this is kind of the dashboard that we put all of our information for all of our programs on. It's a really valuable resource for y'all, hopefully. So like, you have like your IR amendments, your MGA if you have new people that need to be included on certain communications, you would do the MGA contact update form. These are different resources related to like vehicle purchase, equipment purchase, all the stuff that has nothing to do with the program that we're working on right now. But I just, since some of you are new, I just kind of wanted to show y'all this. The relevant piece for us is this one in the top middle, ESG and HTBA program information. So there's the quarterly match report for ESG. That has nothing to do with us. The HTBA program training Zoom replay, that is something that I can link y'all to after this. I think this might have been a training that I did with Access. That's the community action agency that's down in Medford. And then you have the app threes at the very bottom. So this link right here is the second to last link is what you would use for someone who's going to receive like ongoing rental subsidies. Let's say they have like a contract for 12 months and like you want to, help them out during those 12 months, you would use this. For deposit only, that is someone who maybe they're not going to receive ongoing home TBA subsidies, but they need help with their security deposit. You would use the last link. So I will click on this for you. And then it opens up an Excel sheet. And let me switch screens for you real quick. Okay. So this is what the app 3 looks like. It used to look different. Like if you see app 3s from previous program years, it's going to look very different from this. We've updated it this year to kind of, what I tried to do is I added instructions, I updated it based on regulations, and I just tried to make it like easier for us to input in terms of like what we have to give to HUD, but maybe also easier for y'all in terms of like more instructions and you know, how to use these different deductions, for example. So what you would basically do is instructions, complete the required tenant information in the cells. So if something's highlighted in pink, that's something that you need to complete. If it's highlighted in yellow, that means that it's automated. So that's kind of the color scheme that I did. For Community Action Agency, y'all would obviously select, it's a drop-down menu, I don't know if you can see it, but you would just select CENA, App 3 type. So the options are, you know what, let me change screens real quick. Let me do it like this. There we go. Now you can see the drop-down menus. So the App 3 types, you have initiating or continuing benefits or reducing current benefits. So what that basically means is if someone is brand new to the program, or if you're like renewing a contract for someone, you would select initiating or continuing benefits. If someone has to exit the program before their contract is up for whatever reason, or if their contract ended, but you still have like more subsidy that's available to them by the time their contract ended, what you would do is you would do reducing current benefits. But I feel like reductions will be for like another day, unless that's something y'all want to work on. So you would just include the tenant's information here, right? Their last name, their first name, the number of bedrooms, it's basically goes from studio to 5. So you would just select the relevant one. Yellow, that means it's automated. This all means it's automated. This is automated. The ethnicity and race, you would just, again, select the relevant one. Head of household type, you have single, non-elderly, elderly, single parent, two-parent, or not listed. The zip code of the rental unit. So this is the reason we ask for the zip codes is because certain larger, like, it's really for more of like we still need it from you, but this is probably more applicable to like your larger metro counties, like Deschutes with Bend or Lane County with Eugene. Basically, what HUD does is for those types of counties, they do fair market rent based on zip codes, as opposed to they do also do it for the entire county, but they do it based on zip codes. And so what that does is it kind of gives a more accurate reflection of like what the rent is in that area. And that's relevant for like the subsidy that the person receives. It could increase their subsidy. It could also reduce it. It just, but for y'all's purposes, I don't know if HUD has zip code level fair market rents, maybe for Ontario, but I'm not entirely sure. And then you would click the county, you would type in the county of the rental unit. Tenant contract, is the tenant new to the program? It's a simple yes or no. And that is very straightforward. Have they been on the program before? You click yes. No. If they've been on the program before, you click no. If they've not been on the program before, then you click yes. And then the date that the tenant begins to receive subsidies, that is important because of the inspections. So, let's say that the tenant is going to begin receiving subsidies today. The inspection on line 20 has to have occurred on or before the day that the tenant begins receiving subsidies. We are not able to pay any subsidy until a unit passes inspection. So what that means is whenever OHCS goes in to review these things, if I see, you know, if I see that you're trying to, that Cena put that the tenant began receiving subsidies on February 5th, but it didn't pass inspection until March 1st, then we're going to request more information that is frankly annoying and a hassle, and y'all don't want to deal with that. Like, we have to go in and we have to basically go to y'all and say, hey, these aren't right. We need you to correct the dates. We also will want a copy of the entire inspection itself because we want to make sure that like the dates are accurate. We may also ask for like the contract itself too to compare the two dates. So just keep that in mind. If I see that it's, 2/5/25, right? If I see that it's the same date, then I'm not going to ask all those questions. So just be very careful about those dates. Okay. The household income piece, this is where, let me zoom in. That's really tiny. Hang on. Okay. Hopefully that is easier for y'all to read. So I would read the instructions up here. It's just, insert information in the cells to determine whether someone's eligible. And then these are more instructions that's related to like the income specifically. I also included the federal regulation citations itself so that you're able to, you know, you're able to go in and review and, see for yourself what HUD actually needs. But I also included just more information here too. Like, for example, we need the amount of funds received by each household member who's 18 and older. For those under the age of 18, list their unearned annual income. So if they're earning it from like a job, then you would not list it. But if it's like unearned, like, I don't know, they got like an inheritance or they won the lottery or something, you would need to list that. I also include what you don't need to include, what you do not need to list. So as I just mentioned, minors, you don't need to include their earned income. If someone receives anything for like guardianship care, you don't need to include it. Insurance payouts, you don't need to include it. Medical care, do not include. Civil actions or settlements, don't need to include. Anything to like care for like foster children or foster adults, don't worry about that. Student financial assistance, the only time you would include it is if it's work study, an assistantship, or a fellowship. And then there's some other exclusions too that are like not very common, and it would have taken in the entire page to include all of them. So I just put the citation for the less common exclusions. You probably won't run into them, but like if someone comes to you and they have like a weird scenario, then I would go to that citation, or you can just contact me and we can work on it together. Yeah. So you would just include like, I'll use myself, Cody Sibley, annual wages and salaries. I'll just make up a number here. Let's pretend I made like 12,000 a year. Benefits, pensions, let's say I made 0. I don't know, let's say like 500 a year. Other annual income, 0. And just so you know, this is all annual. So keep that in mind as you're typing it in. And then assets, this is very rare. I don't know if I've ever seen someone on the program that had assets. But what you need to know is if the assets are above 50,000, then basically HUD multiplies that amount by 0.40 to kind of, it excludes a lot of assets from the income calculation, but a certain amount will be included. And then if it's less than 50,000, then what HUD says is, it just doesn't look at your assets, it protects them, and it doesn't factor it into the subsidy calculation. Yeah, so I would just do that, 0, 0. Total annual income becomes 12,500. The household size, you would put that here. There's 1 through 8. Let's pretend there's 4. And then this one, based on the household size, annual income, and HUD's income limits, what is the household's area median income percentage? And I just put a link down there for you. So you can click on the link and you just choose whatever's the most recent, whatever the most recent AMI is. So access individual income limit areas, you would click on this. You would go to Oregon. And then I keep picking on Malheur County for y'all. If there's another county that y'all service that you want me to use as an example, just let me know. So yeah. So then median family income is 65,800. Yeah. So then if it's 50% of the income limit, it would be this amount for a family of 4. Extremely low is like 30% or under. I don't know why they didn't put a percentage there, but that would be 31,064 for 80%. For a family. So you would just like basically go to the household size and then you would see which one of these it applies to. With this amount for 4 people, that would be 0 to 30%. And then line 27 says, yes, they're eligible. This is where you can go in and put in different deductions. So, and I will again zoom in because that is tiny. So just so you know, the annual income is like how much money the person made or the household made, and that's how you determine who's actually eligible. And then the adjusted income is what we use to calculate the subsidy. So what HUD says is basically, okay, you're eligible. Now let's protect some more of your income so that, you have the money to like pay for your children to go to daycare or take care of an elderly family member, etc. We don't want you paying rent when you could be paying for those things. And again, I put in instructions on like what you should and shouldn't include. Going with the same example, let's say that of this family of 4, I don't know, let's say 3 of them are dependents. If you have any reasonable childcare expenses for children under the age of 13, you would include that there. Again, that's annual, right? Like what were the reasonable childcare expenses that they paid or expected to pay throughout the year? For the purposes of this tutorial, let's just say 0. And then the childcare dependent deduction is like 1440. So I believe for like 1 child, it's like 480, and you just kind of multiply it by that amount to get that number. Disability and elderly deductions. So this question, how many household members are at least 62 years old or have a disability? So if you have someone who meets both of those criteria, you would just put 1, right? Like, let's pretend that I'm like 70 years old and I have some sort of disability. I meet both of those criteria, but I'm 1 person, so you would just put 1. If you have a child that has a disability, even though they're counted up here, you can count, I believe you can count them again down here. So you would put 1 there if you have a child with a disability, otherwise 0. Any unreimbursed disability expenses is basically like, yeah, attendant care or equipment. What you would include here is anything that has not been reimbursed and anything that's necessary for them to work. So, you can make the argument that, I mean, let's say that someone needs a wheelchair in order to work, then and they paid for it out of their own pocket, like Medicaid or whatever insurance they have didn't pay for it, you can put that amount here. I have no idea how much wheelchairs are, but let's say they're like 500. It would protect that amount. And then any unreimbursed medical expenses for anyone 62 years or older, you would put that right here. That protects portions of their income as well. And yeah, you would include all that. Then at the bottom, this calculates their annual adjusted income, their monthly adjusted income, and then 30% of their monthly adjusted income, 277. So basically, 277 becomes the amount that they're expected to contribute to their rent. And then part 4, you have the actual, this is kind of where we figure out what the subsidy is. And again, I included instructions for y'all. Please read them. If they don't make sense, then you can come to me. But yeah, I try to make it as easy as I can with how complicated these federal programs can be. I know they're not the easiest for people, but I tried my best. So the monthly rent, as stated on the rental agreement, let's pretend it's 1,200. The utility schedule, I'm just gonna make up a number right here. I'm not entirely sure what yours would be, but let's just say it's $100. Then the gross rent becomes 1,300. So then we get to the maximum rental subsidy. So basically you would just take the fair market rent of your county, or the small area fair market rent. What I tell agencies is if they're in a jurisdiction with a small area fair market rent, like the zip code based one that I was talking about, choose whichever one of these is the higher version. The reason being is that as of right now, or as of last time I checked, there is no jurisdiction in Oregon that is required to choose the small area fair market rents. Your really large jurisdictions like New York City, Chicago, Houston, those will be required because those are just major metropolitan areas. The biggest city we have is Portland, and they're not required by HUD as of right now. So again, these are links that you can use. And I am curious to see if y'all have small area fair market rent. So I'm going to click on it. You choose the latest year available. This is small area. So Malheur County is included. Okay. Yeah. So then what you would do is basically just compare the FMRs. Oregon, Malheur, next screen. We'll do like that. So it's in the example I used, it's a family of 4, me plus like 3 dependents. If they're both, if they're opposite sex, in like minors, then they can have their own room. But if they're the same, then like you put them in a shared room. So let's say a 3-bedroom. So the fair market rent for Malheur County is $1,348 for a 3-bedroom. And then the 3-bedroom fair market rents for various zip codes within Malheur County range from 1310 looks like the lowest I can see, and then like 1770 looks like the highest. So I'll just pick, let's say for this example, the household lives in 97907. Let's say they live in that zip code. The 3-bedroom is 1310, but the countywide is 1348. We're going to go with 1348. So you would just put that number here. The fair market rent is 1348. That means that the subsidy can pay for, the entire gross rent minus the tenant contribution. So that becomes the rent standard because it's the lower of the two. 1300 is lower than 1348. Then there's no rent overage. How many full months will the tenant receive assistance? So how many full months? As we saw from this one, February is not a full month because we started it on the 5th. So we would say, let's say 11 months because, and it always shows up as a dollar sign here. I need to correct that, but every time I do, it just re-changes to a dollar sign. So just kind of ignore it. But let's say there's 11 full months plus the prorated month of February. You would do that. And then you would basically enter the amount of prorated rent that the agency will pay on behalf of the tenant using home TBA funds. So for prorated rents, home TBA can pay up to the rent, up to whatever the full month subsidy would be. So it can pay up to 1023. Because that's the rental subsidy. Regardless of like what the tenant's contribution would be that month, it can just pay up to the full amount. The caveat is, of course, that, let's say that the prorated rent that the landlord charges is only like $900, then that's what you would put there. You just take the lower. And that's what we'll do here. And again, this is regardless of tenant contribution. The security deposit, if they're using home funds to pay for the security deposit, the rule is it can't exceed 2 months gross rent. So the gross rent is the 1300. So it can pay 1300 times 2. If your local county or city has further restrictions than 2 months rent, then you need to follow that. But otherwise, you can do 1300 times 2, which is like 2600, I believe. So like, and then utility deposits are extremely rare. I don't think I've ever seen someone pay for a utility deposit here. So I'll put that as 0. And then that is what the total subsidy is for that person. And then you would take this information and you'd put it on a workbook, on the RFF workbooks that we give to y'all. But that's basically the walkthrough. So if you're not sure if someone's eligible, you can like just put their salary, their wages, their income information on this workbook. And you look at their how they compare to the median household income. And yeah. And again, the only restrictions on who's not eligible would be certain students of like higher education, and then certain non-citizens. However, that doesn't always have to be verified depending on like what your status is as an organization. Otherwise, anyone else is eligible. We did there used to be an option. Well, currently there's an option about like what's called a self-sufficiency plan, where like if a tenant, you can require certain tenants to participate. Well, you can require them to sign up for the plan, but they're not required to participate. But you can say if you don't participate, then we won't renew your contract. I believe we're doing away with that because HUD was really shying away from requiring that info. So now it's like you can present it as an option to them, but they don't have to participate, and like you can't use that as a reason to like deny them moving forward. Um, but yeah, I mean, otherwise, really eligibility is almost solely income based. A lot of community action agencies use this program as kind of a bridge to putting them on Section 8 housing or other project or voucher programs. Um, the other thing is there's no time limit on how long they can be on the program. You do just have to renew them 12 months at a time. So like, look at your budget. Look at like, how many people you have on the program. It's really subject to your funding availability. But if you have the funds to continue to put them on the program and you want to continue putting them on the program, then there's no restrictions from either OHCS or HUD. And that's it. I hope I didn't bore y'all too much. Are there any other questions that y'all have?
I had a quick one just for continuing support. If the client situation changes significantly, like let's say they, gain new employment or something like that, is that an instantly reportable thing, or is that like when you renew?
It's when you renew largely. I mean, I would need to go back and look at the manual to get you the specific language, but largely it's, there's a little bit of like wealth building that HUD allows so that, they're not fully shocked with like new expenses and they can, to give them an opportunity. So, we don't require you to re-verify the income as soon as you become as soon as something happens. If you become aware of it, um, then I think that becomes a different story, but I don't think they're required to tell you. And I can look at the manual really quickly and get you that info. Let's see. But I believe it's just you verify their income like once a year. And that verification actually this is kind of a different point, but that verification is good for, I believe, up to it's somewhere between 3 to 6 months that it's good for. So what that means is like you verify their income and you're like, great, you are eligible to be on this program, go find an apartment. They basically have like a 3 to 6 month window to look for and secure housing. If it takes them longer than that, then you do have to re-verify their income. But if they find housing, then it's like, great, we'll put you on it. We don't need to verify anything, and you're good for the next next year, basically.
Okay.
Yeah, did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did.
Okay, great. And then let's see. Yeah. Re-verifying income. Okay, so income is only required to be verified annually. Income verification obtained 6 months prior to program is good for 1 year, even if the contract is less than a year and outside. Yeah, so the income verification is good for a year.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and now that I can see the chat, let me go ahead. Excuse me. Let me go ahead and that is a link to the HSS kind of landing page for you. And then here's also a link to the Home TBA manual. It's long and it's not fun to read, but once you get like the hang of things, you can start doing I usually just do like Control F searches, and it can get you the info that you need. But yeah, any other questions? Okay, I will take that silence as a no. So next steps are we will publish this training. I believe we post it on YouTube now. So we will post this training on YouTube, and once it's available, I will email you guys the link so that y'all can go back and reference this whenever you need. If you have any other questions with this program, please reach out to me. More than happy to help walk y'all through this. When it comes to this program, there is like that app 3 that I just showed you. You do need to upload that document to it's this website called Procorum, and I will grant you all access. I believe Miranda and Priscilla on y'all's team have access already. But I'll make sure that y'all have everyone on this yeah, everyone here has access. And there you'll see y'all's, it's called a request for funds workbook. So that is kind of like everyone that has an app 3, you put them on like this like master spreadsheet, and we look at it as an agency, and that could be a training for another day. That could be like part 2 if y'all want. And then any person that you're putting on the program, you would submit the app 3 to us. Reason being is that we take the information that you put and we put it on this like HUD portal, and then HUD releases the funds to us, and then we release the funds to you. It's an extra bureaucratic step. I think HUD does it. I don't know. It's a way to do some sort of like, good governance control, waste, fraud, and abuse. So we follow that. But yeah, if there's no other questions, then thank you all for coming. And feel free to email me if anything comes up.
Thank you so much, Cody. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for the training.
Yeah, of course. All right, y'all take care.
Bye.